Uppsala is my favorite discovery of summer 2017. During the past year, I visited a couple of places in Sweden, but nothing beats this charming city. I've written a couple of texts to which I put links in the box below. They are guides and also just descriptions of specific monuments and places in Uppsala. Here, I want to focus on the things that are must-see while you're in Uppsala, and one place that maybe surprisingly I suggest to skip. This goes without saying. Uppsala has been a religious center for Sweden since the Middle Ages. The cathedral was built between the late 13th century and the first half of the 15th century. Yet, many changes have been applied to the cathedral throughout the centuries. Sometimes due to the fire, sometimes due to alternating trends in the architecture. Most of the cathedral's present look that we can admire today is owed to Helge Zettervall, most influential Swedish architect of the 19th century. First, he restored Lund Cathedral to its Romanesque style. Later, he did the same thing with Uppsala Cathedral, just bringing back the Gothic style. Beside the general beauty of cathedral, it is worth visiting also as it's the final resting place of two Swedish kings, Gustav Vasa and John III, their wives, couple of statesmen, from which I can mention Magnus Stenbock, who defended Skåne from Danes in 1710. There is also a great botanist, Carl Linné, and two saints, Saint Eric and Saint Birgitta. So this is just a small percent of what you can find in the cathedral. If you want more historical items, you should definitely check the treasury, to which the entrance you can find through the gift shop. As I mentioned before, Uppsala has been the religious center of Sweden for a very long time. Before the cathedral was built, and even before Christianity, Swedes visited this place known as Gamla Uppsala, which today is a bit north from the city, and you can easily get there by a local bus. There are few historical sources which convey a knowledge about a pagan temple which was located in Gamla Uppsala. You might have also seen this in Vikings, and although I might enjoy the TV show, I don't recommend it as a historical source. Today there is no trace of the pagan temple, but instead you can look at and even walk on the famous three royal mounds. According to the mythology, it is believed that Thor, Odin and Freyr were buried there. But this is just folklore, and what I can say for sure, the mounds are dated to the 5th and 6th century. Beside the mounds, you can also visit a church, which is still there. It is probably located in the same place where the temple stood before. It was built between the 11th and the 12th century. The entry is free of charge. Around this place, Saint Eric was killed, and this became the first resting place of his relics. And when the cathedral in Uppsala was built, the relics were moved there. If you seek more knowledge, served in a very accessible way, I can recommend the Gamla Uppsala Museum. The Gamla Uppsala Museum, the church and the mounds are located very close to each other, so you don't have to worry that you have to walk very long distances to get from one to the other. In the museum you can find not just written text on the walls, which can be pretty overwhelming, but smaller and bigger reconstructed objects which help you to understand and feel the atmosphere of those times. Beside the history of Gamla Uppsala itself, I was very positively surprised to find also information about the discovery and the first research made in that place already in the 19th century. Swedes are strong and green all over the country, and Uppsala is no exception. Of course, this point works the best when it's late spring or summer. I was in Uppsala in July and the weather was fantastic. For sure, you should check the old cemetery. for its general design and its peacefulness, the extraordinary carefulness with which the graves were made. For sure, you shouldn't miss Linanum, which you can see from the castle. Again, this is nothing spectacular, it's just nice to walk among the greens, relax and have a cup of coffee. Inside the building you can find a sculpture of Carl Linné. And if the old cemetery is a place for contemplation, and Linanum seems a bit too touristic and a bit too strict, you should go to the city park. It's a place for families, with kids, games, fun, doggos, and some weird sculptures that might appear just from nowhere and you don't know what they represent. So, very nice. Okay, so I wanted to share with you the places that I personally think are must-see in Uppsala. They don't have to coincide with top results from Google. And an example of that is the Royal Castle. I don't think that the building itself is worth seeing. Yet, the castle is located on the hill, so you have a great view over the city. And if you're determined, I can recommend checking the ruins of the old castle, Vasaborgen. Again, this is nothing spectacular, but for me it was a great experience to see raw walls of this place which has such a historical meaning. This is the most important part for me of visiting a new city. Of course, seeing all the monuments and visiting the museums develop me and give me much joy. But this is not all that there is. Maybe feeling like home is hard or even impossible, but I try to avoid the strangeness. I'm not seeking the best restaurants or the best clubs in the new place. I'm trying to find a place where I can sit down, have a cup of coffee, read a book, or just look at the water. And in Uppsala you have the greatest environment for that by Fyrisån River. So even if you are in Uppsala just for a day, try to find this coffee break after lunch or dinner and forget that seeing all the streets and visiting all the museums doesn't mean that later you can say, okay, I know the city, I felt it. Those things were just top suggestions that I think that are the essence of Uppsala. For the variations, you are more than welcome to check my text, to which I put the links in the box below. Have you been to Uppsala? What is your impression of the city? Do you agree or disagree with my suggestions and why? Let me know in the comments below. Take care!